the kids on the underground, they've got a thread going on about Tom Aspinall. By the way, there's no W in his name. It's Tom Aspinall. A W slips in when I say it. No condescension meant there. Want to tell you this, though. The thread about him said he is the most dynamic, skillful heavyweight in a while. Didn't say ever, it said in a while. So let's take a look at that, because you got to understand Tom's a good-looking heavyweight. Now, when you hear that term, a good-looking heavyweight, I don't mean that that athlete is handsome. Tom's a very handsome guy. But that's not what we're saying. We say good-looking heavyweight. A good-looking heavyweight is when you take one look at him, does he look athletic? It's not just what does he weigh, it's what does he weigh in addition to how he's proportioned. What is his height? How long are his arms? Hey, he's a good-looking heavyweight. He looks like he can move. It's one of these things, and Aspinall is like 6'5", 250 pounds. That's a big human being, but he's a good-looking heavyweight. 250 isn't the same just on anybody. I've never got to 250 myself, but you guys would not look at me and go, he looks like an athlete. Just wonder, when you're 6'5", it's a little bit different, but those guys tend to specialize. And they specialize in punching you in the face really hard. That's not what we're seeing from Aspinall. I am extremely impressed with Aspinall's boxing. I like the way he moves. I like the way he goes to the body. I like the power that he has. But when the house has been on fire twice now, once with Arlovsky and most recently with Volkov, he went to wrestling. That's a skill that we didn't see. And I think that's what the kids on the underground are really paying tribute to. I think Tom came out and surprised them with a skill that not only did they not know he was armed with, that they would expect that he would not be armed with. And that's just territorial speaking. They don't enter or contest the World Olympic Championships in England, not in wrestling. So it's always a surprise when they get a fighter that can come over. It could be Darren Till, it could be Michael Bisping, that can deal with wrestling. If you can just deal with wrestling, good enough. Good enough. Tom's different. He's invoking the takedowns. And he's doing all of this while I'm telling you as clear as I know how to speak, this is what he's best at. But he's got these damn good ground skills. I think the reason he beat Arlovsky, and I think the reason he dominated Volkov, because they're just like everybody else. They didn't know he had that. They were not prepared for that. You guys might remember one of the fights that I found most impressive in recent memory, but it was Robert Whittaker versus Kelvin Gastelum. And those guys can beat each other. Those are two of the best guys in the world. That's between them. One thing that Whittaker cannot do is take down Kelvin Gastelum. That I'm very confident in telling you, but one person that would agree with me was Kelvin Gastelum, which is why Kelvin was so caught off guard when Whittaker breaks out these skills. It's a huge advantage. It's one of the arts of war. If you have a weapon that your opponent can't deal with, or if you have a weapon that your opponent does not know about, it's very effective. And the word's now getting out on Tom. Tom's hands that I'm sitting here bragging to you guys about are going to be more effective moving forward. They're going to be more effective with guys out there defensive trying to stop the wrestling. You stop the wrestling, boom. You're right where Tom wants you. Tom comes out, reminds you of some of this power that Chael's over speaking about, boom, that's what sets up those takedowns. It's very interesting. I like the concept. Now, I'm very happy for all the heavyweights except one, which is Ciryl. I have never met Ciryl Gane, and Ciryl Gane has done nothing to me. I did not cross paths, and he was rude to me. It's nothing like that. I'm upset with him. I have never seen anybody play a hand so poorly, and that is a massive statement because you are filled with the dumbest guys in the room who never get anything right ever. I have a lot to choose from when I'm saying who's played a hand worst, and the worst is Ciryl Gane. We have done all the work for Ciryl. We did such a good job pushing and promoting and elevating him that we got a guy within 15 fights of the inception of his career into a main event, into not only one title fight, but two. We even put a belt around the sumbitch. We did that. He has not helped at all. And the only reason I bring to you Ciryl is he's got a really great skill set. And again, to go back to the quote from the kids on the underground, where they're talking about Tom, and is Tom's got the best skills that we've seen in a while. I don't know how long in a while is, but I do think that Ciryl's going to fall into that category. If Ciryl is brand new too, and Ciryl's got some awesome skills, and you talk about a good-looking heavyweight, he's a good-looking heavyweight. He's got that length, he's got that speed, he's got one of those guys at heavyweight that actually has rhythm. Rhythm is something very rare. Jon Jones is about to introduce it to that division on a level that they've never experienced before, but Ciryl's right there. Ciryl's hard to hit. Ciryl going into the Francis fight had never been taken down. He's hard to hit. He's hard to touch. He's hard to get your hands on. But Ciryl doesn't play the game. at all. At all. Everybody likes, myself included, this is the first time I'm turning on him. But I can't take it anymore. And I'm not going to do all of the heavy lifting by myself anymore. And by me, I mean us. Can't just elevate the sumbitch. He's got to speak up. He's got to say something. And heavyweight has two divisions. You got the great fighters, then you have the stars. And they are not the same guys. The category of notoriety that the Stipes, that the Jon Joneses, that the Francis Ngannous, that the Ciryl Gane, that the Derek Lewises go into, and now Tai Tuivasa. You've got those guys, and then you got a really hard time producing 5 more heavyweights signed under contract with the Ultimate Fighting Championship. That's not to say the rest of those guys aren't great, but they can't get onto the docket with the stars. They just can't do it. These stars are separating themselves. They go into a little category, and then they just play ball amongst themselves. It's really hard to break in. You have to figure out how to infiltrate the popular table. You just do. Ciryl is the most susceptible because he has done nothing. He deserves to stay at that table less than anyone else. He has not spoke up. And Aspinall versus Ciryl, I mean, I'm just giving you an example. But if Aspinall is as good as I think he is and that you guys think he is, he's never going to have a chance to prove it just by getting in the octagon, regardless of placement on a card, including if it's to return to the main event. He must get in with one of the popular kids. He's got to find himself across from one of these 6. Now, he's doing his best job, and he called out Tuivasa, and I haven't heard a better idea. But when you are understanding your career and how to manage it and manipulate it, there's guys that you need to get on. I just gave you 6 names. Now, of those 6 names, there are some guys you want to stay the hell away from. You do not need to go play with Jon Jones just because it gets you a seat next to the cool kids. Stay away from him. Everybody else starts to be a little bit more open. Doesn't look like you're going to be able to play ball with Stipe because I think those guys are already booked. That's my own opinion. But everybody else is wide open. They're going to do their job, though, which is to say no. They're going to do their job to say he's not well enough known. He's not popular enough. He hasn't proved himself. They're all reasons to get out of doing something they don't want to do while trying to save face. The one guy that's wide open at that cool kids table that you want to sit at is Ciryl. And the one guy that doesn't deserve for anything more good to happen to him is Ciryl. We've already done it. Not 1, but 2 title fights. Biggest heavyweight fight in terms of sheer size, in terms of what's at stake. Both guys got a belt. It's Hogan versus Ward, the greatest story in heavyweight history. We made him part of. He did nothing with it. He dropped that ball. I will maintain for you to this day, Ciryl versus Francis is the greatest storyline that any 2 players have ever been handed. I cannot pull you out the sheets of the numbers and make you believe that. You're going to look at these guys. It did terrible. Yeah, you know it did terrible. But it did terrible for a reason. And he's 50% of that reason. So he's not exactly in the line of favors going to be done to him. He does have a beautiful ranking. He does have a beautiful record. He does have a former championship. So he is going to go into a category. I'm just saying that's the one to break into. Derek Lewis always going to be in high demand. Tai Tuivasa might be the most popular of the bunch. Jon Jones isn't even licensed. Stipe's pretty clear. I'm taking on Jon whenever Jon comes back. I mean, you start to see where the story opens up. But there's one more spot at the cool table that no longer has protection. The rest of them do. Nobody's going to be looking to protect Ciryl because Ciryl hasn't done anything for anybody else. Aspinall, there's your opponent. Go after him.